can I see hands? How many people are going to be making Play-Doh with me at the same time today? Yeah, awesome. All right, so there were 2 recipes for ingredients to make Play-Doh. There's one that you need to have an adult with you. I'm going to show you guys how to do that one, and then I'm going to show you guys the one that you can make on your own. And be aware, it can get a little messy, but it will be fun. All right. So the first one, how many of you guys are going to do the recipe that has cornstarch and baking soda? Can I see hands if you guys are using the one with cornstarch and baking soda? All right, that is the one that's going to require a stove. So if you are doing the one with cornstarch and baking soda, do you have an adult with you? Yes? Okay, awesome. So this is the simplest recipe you guys can think of for Play-Doh. And you know those cans of Play-Doh that you find sometimes, the actual ones that say Play-Doh on them, how they're nice and squishy, and they're really super soft. This is what they look like. And this is the first recipe I'm going to teach you guys how to make. So I made some last night with my daughters. So do you guys see that? Do you see how light and fluffy that is and how it sinks right in? And it really cool, right? So this is the first one I'm going to teach you guys how to make, is this type of Play-Doh. And when we make this one, you can use whatever color you want afterwards. But the first step is to is going to make sure that we have all the things we need in order to make it. So the first thing is you're going to need a measuring cup. So this is my measuring cup here. All right. Is everybody, do you guys have your measuring cups? Awesome. All right. And then you're going to need cornstarch. So I have this box of cornstarch here that I got from Wegmans. And what we need to do is we need to make sure we have that. And then we also need a box, and it doesn't have to be a lot, but it's going to equivalent to 1 cup of baking soda. So right now I have my cornstarch, my baking soda, my measuring cup. This is all up to 1 cup. Do you guys see that there? It only says 1 cup, so it's not a huge measuring cup. And I'm going to need a saucepan. A saucepan, something like this, doesn't have to be too big, just simple saucepan. And you'll need something similar to a spatula or something that you can use to mix, okay? So step 1, we're going to need a 1/2 cup of cornstarch. So remember, we're grabbing our cornstarch. And it's, like I said, it gets a little messy here. So if you guys see a puff of white smoke, there, yep, some of it's coming up. We're doing a 1/2 cup of cornstarch. I'm going to measure it slowly into my cup here and make sure that I have the right amount. Everybody see that? I've got there's my half right there. So I have my 1/2 cup of cornstarch, and I'm going to put it into my saucepan. All right, so there goes the cornstarch. All right, then I'm going to get my baking soda. Baking soda. All right, and we're going to need 1 cup of baking soda. I'm opening my package of baking soda here. I've got my cup. I'm still using the same one. Nothing wrong with that. We're going to pour it all the way to the top line. All right, so my 1 cup of baking soda, and I'm mixing it together with my 1/2 cup of cornstarch. So now I have 1.5 cups of baking soda and cornstarch. I'm going to grab my spatula here. And again, it doesn't have to be a spatula. It can be whatever you guys have to mix. I'm just going to mix them together a little bit, okay? So there are 2 white powders. See? Nothing fancy, just 2 white powders, okay? Mix them together a little bit. And then I'm going to take my dirty cup again because we're still not done. And I'm going to add 3/4 of a cup of water. So I have my water right here. And I'm going to look for my 3/4 line, which is right there, right underneath the 1 cup. And I'm going to pour my water in to get to my 3/4. And I'm going to put it into the saucepan. So far, we have our 1/2 cup of cornstarch. We have our 1 cup of baking soda. And we've added in 3/4 of a cup of water. And I'm going to use that same spatula here, as you guys can see. I'm just kind of mixing it in so we can get those chunks out. We want the cornstarch as well as the baking soda to dissolve into the water. And it's going to look kind of like milk. Have you guys seen it? You all know what milk looks like, right? It's going to look kind of like milk. It's not clear. It's not, but it's got that white, that off-white, whitish color. And we're going to mix it in. And so right now, all it is literally, it looks like milk in a saucepan. All right. Is everybody who's doing that recipe, can I see your hands up if you've gotten that far? If you're doing the recipe with the cornstarch and you have your half a cup of cornstarch, your 1 cup of baking soda, and 3/4 of a cup of water, let me see those hands up. Great. Now, are they mixed? And is your adult who is there with you ready to put it on the stove? Okay. So if you've got your half a cup of cornstarch, your 1 cup of baking soda, and 3/4 of a cup of water all in your saucepan, and you've mixed them a little bit so that they're not clumpy, your adult should now at this point be able to take your saucepan and put it on the stove on medium heat. This is going to be done in less than 5 minutes. So your adult can take it and put it in the saucepan, medium heat on the stove, and continuously stir it for less than 5 minutes. What you're going to notice is within about a minute, it's going to look even more like thick milk. About two minutes in, as you're stirring it, you're going to see clumps start to form on the side of your spatula or whatever you guys are using to mix. By the time you hit about 4 minutes, you're going to notice that the sides of it are going to start looking something like this. So the sides of it will end up starting to look something like that. All right. There might be a little bit of liquid still, and it will very quickly turn from liquid to this thickness here. At that point, you'll take it off the fire and you'll need somewhere to put it down. I'm using some parchment paper. And what I did is as soon as it was ready, I took it out from my saucepan. You guys see it in my hand here? And I put it on parchment paper. This is what it turned into. Some parts of it at the beginning will look softer than some of the others. Some of the others might look a little drier. But once you start to play around with it, you guys see that in my hand? It's all going to turn soft. What's really important though, technically you can, but I don't really think that anybody's going to like the taste of it. It's cornstarch and baking powder. So while this is safe to eat because you have cornstarch and baking powder in a lot of different things that you eat, especially breads, I don't think it's going to taste that good.
Yeah, it might taste a little salty, probably not very tasty, that's for sure.
When you guys are done, when it turns to that consistency and you take it off the fire, you're gonna not need to let it cool because it's gonna be coming right off the fire, which means it's going to be hot. Okay, so I made this batch, it's in my hand right here. I made it about 5 minutes before we started. Okay, I see a question.
Hi, Hunter. Can you or your mommy type your question in the box for me? I know mom looks like she's very busy. We can come back to your question if you need a minute, buddy, okay? It looks like your mom's doing good.
Yeah. All right, so there's a question about when do we add color? As soon as it cools down. Oh, it takes a couple minutes, bud. It will get thick. It just takes about, it will be done in less than 5 minutes. It just at the beginning, it's just going to look like bubbly milk. And then it starts to thicken up around the edges. And when it thickens up around the edges, you keep stirring it, and about a minute or so later, oh, I see that thumbs up. So he's getting it. He's getting it. Medium heat. So depending on if your stove has like numbers on it, a medium heat, like if it's the numbers are 1 to 6, medium heat would be like a 3. Okay. Because you usually have like a low and it has numbers and then there's a high. So somewhere around a 3 would be medium heat. You guys see that? So mine, like I said, mine is cooled down a little bit because I'd done it right before we got on. And any of those like little white patches that looked flaky have now all completely been worked into it. Now I saw a question about color. Color comes next, okay? So once you take it off and let it cool down, and we're gonna switch for a little bit. We're gonna, yes, it is going to be soft. Once you work it in, do you guys see that? It literally is super soft. And you see it?
You guys are doing great.
I know, I see some big eyes. I'm like, oh my God, right?
Yeah, they're like, wow, we're making our own
Right.
Play-Doh.
Did you guys see that? It's super soft. And do you see how it takes my imprint, like my finger imprints in it? And it's not sticking to my hands. This is, out of all the different types of Play-Doh I've made, this is one of my favorite because it feels like that Play-Doh that you get in the store. And it's super, super soft. You guys see? I'm trying to get it as close up to you. You guys see that? And the best part is you get to choose the color. So once yours cools, what we're going to do is while your adult is mixing it on the stove and getting it ready, when they're done, they can put it on a piece of parchment paper or a mat, something to let it cool. And once it cools, then we'll work it a little bit and then we can add color. So while we're going to let all of our adults who are using that recipe, give them a couple minutes to work on that. For everyone who's doing the other recipe, I'm going to show you guys how to do the other recipe if you don't have an adult with you today. You guys ready for that?
Awesome.
All right. So we're going to come back to this and add the color, but we're going to switch gears for a little bit for the other people here who don't have an adult to help them cook on the stove today. And that is the recipe that requires 2 cups of flour, 1 cup of salt, a teaspoon of vinegar, which is it's just a teaspoon of oil, very little bit of oil, just to make it like a little oily, and some cold water. All right. So for the second recipe, if you guys are doing a second recipe with me, I've got, instead of a pan, because we're not using anything on the stove. All right. And again, we're not done with the other one. The other one's going to sit and cool. You have your adult helping you mix it. Then it needs to cool. So we're not done with it, but we're going to come back to it. But for the recipe, if you don't have an adult, I have a bowl here. Okay. And I'm going to get my measuring cup. This time, this measuring cup, and you can do it with a small measuring cup. You can do it with a big measuring cup. Whatever you guys have on hand is going to work. It's not a big deal. This one I have here has 2 cups on it. And this is going to make it easier for me doing the 1 and 2 because I need 2 cups of flour. So this shows me 2 right here. So I'm going to get my flour. Got my bag of flour. I'm going to open it up. Man, I'm getting messy. I've got like cornstarch flying out of these bags at me. I've got flour flying at me. By the end of this, I'm going to be covered in white powder.
Well, when you bake, you always have lots of fun making a mess, right?
That is true. All right. So I've got I just opened up my bag of flour. I'm going to get my 2 cups of it right now. I'm pouring it in. I'm trying my best not to make a mess, but you know, you end up getting messy, especially with any kind of baking, just part of it.
Great job, guys. I see a lot of measuring and pouring. You're doing great.
All right, so I got my 2 cups here. Do you guys all see that? I got my 2 cups of flour, and I got my bowl, and I'm going to start by putting my 2 cups of flour into my bowl. All right.
We're going to wait on any food coloring. Okay, so right now we're letting the other Play-Doh that our parent helped us with cool. And then we're going to come back to that and make it pretty and add the color. But now we're going to work on the one where we don't need to use the stove. And then we'll figure out if we're going to color that one, okay?
Sure. And I have some questions about repeating the steps. Yes. So the steps for the first one that required a parent or an adult, okay, was a 1/2 cup of cornstarch, 1 cup of baking soda, and 3/4 cup of water, all mixed into a saucepan before putting it on the stove. And it's very important. Don't put it on the stove if you have to. You have to have them mixed together before putting it onto the stove. And then you sit there and you mix it around with your spatula, your wooden spoon, whatever it is you have in the kitchen that an adult is doing for you. All right. And until it thickens. And I can see a bunch of friends here. I can see them, their mommies, their daddies, like grabbing it out of the saucepan and putting it in front. When it's ready, when it thickens and it's ready, you have to let it cool. Otherwise you will burn your little hands, and nobody wants your hands getting burned. It doesn't feel good, right? Nobody wants to burn their hands from it. So it has to cool. That is, and we are going to come back and add food coloring to it, but we're going to let it cool. So that's time for our first one to cool. Our second one involves flour, salt, oil, and water. Okay. And it is 2 cups of flour, 1 cup of salt, which we're getting right now. I just grabbed my salt. Gosh, my salt does not want to open right now. I'm trying to get the top of it off.
Every time I always drop it in. Just part of the fun, guys.
There we go. Finally got it. All right. So it's 1 cup of salt. So I'm right here, and you guys are watching me. It's going to be a little bit of time to pour the salt here, but all right. 1 cup of salt. You guys see that? So I've got my 2 cups of flour, 1 cup of salt. I'm putting my salt in with my flour. And now 1 cup of cold water. It doesn't have to be freezing cold or anything. Just don't have it hot, okay? So I'm using drinking water. So I'm using 1 cup of cold water. Okay, 1 cup of cold water. 1 cup of salt, 2 cups of flour. Yep, the oil is going to be 1 teaspoon, so very little. So even if you don't have a teaspoon to measure it with, it's a very, very small amount of oil, okay? Because you don't want the whole thing to be super oily. It's just enough so that it doesn't stick to your hands. All right, so I'm putting my water in right now. And then here's my oil. I'm just using some home vinegar oil, nothing fancy. And I'm doing 1 small teaspoon of oil. So I just put that in. All right. And I have 2 spatulas here. You can see this one's the clean one, right? Yes, now we're going to mix it. So you can start to mix it. I'm mixing it here. I'm going to try to turn there we go. So you guys can see that a little bit better. So you can see.
This is usually when I make a mess and I get it all over my kitchen when I'm stirring.
Oh, as you guys can see, I've already got like powder everywhere. I've clearly made a mess, but it's okay. We'll just clean it up afterwards. But
Some of you guys are very clean at this. Not Miss Heather, not at all.
As you guys will see, it starts to clump together. Do you see that, how it's clumping? So that's the point where I'm just going to scoop it off of my spatula. I'm going to get my hands in there and start working it. Do you guys see that? And you can see how it's starting to come together. Just keep working it in. All right, and you can see it starts kind of like that until you get it all worked in. That's okay. Just keep. You guys see how it's starting to come together? It does take a little while to work it in.
It's coming together.
And every so often I like to do this to get like those extra pieces at the bottom of the bowl, right? Try to get them to work it in a little. And then I'll flip it over and I'll keep working it in. This technique is called kneading, where it's like you're really just moving it. Yep, we're all mixing. It does take a little bit of time, and that's okay.
It was 2 cups of flour. Was it 1 cup of salt?
1 cup of salt, 1 teaspoon of oil, and 1 cup of cold water.
So just 4 easy ingredients to make this one.
And I've made it plenty of times without the oil too. It's just that the oil kind of helps with the overall feeling of it, so it's less like grainy feeling. Which, if you look at the difference, I'm going to show you guys the 2 different kinds right now. Do you guys notice the difference in the type of Play-Doh? This one looks more like putty almost, right? And you guys can see, if you guys like kinetic sand, it has that feeling of kinetic sand to it. Whereas this one is more of your you guys can kind of see because it's made with the salt in it, it has more of that grainy feeling.
That's a great comparison. That kinetic sand. We just got some of that at my house, guys. Does anybody have that? That's so cool. I'm late to the game, but it's very cool. And you can see the difference in the two different Play-Dohs as you hold them, definitely.
All right, so mine is ready. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually switch out this bowl here and try to somewhat clean up my mess. You guys can see here, I'm just using the bowl to get whatever leftovers I can off the table because I'm going to put down a piece of parchment paper and show you guys how we're going to do some of the colors next. So this is just some parchment paper or cooking sheet. You guys can see I'm putting it in front of me here because that's going to help me when I put my 2 packs of Play-Doh. Here's one, right? And here's the other. And again, do you guys see the difference here? This one's a little darker too. It has more of that doughy like, you know, maybe like if you guys make cookies. Have you guys ever made cookies? It has more of that cookie dough feel to it. Versus this one here. You guys can see that this is more very much like that kinetic sand in a way, right? They're both really cool, but different at the same time. All right, I need a pulse check here. How many people in the room are ready for color? So see, I have mine ready, but you guys may not be ready yet. So I want to know how many people are ready for color.
Raise your hand or put it in the chat so we know you're ready. And if you're not, that's okay. We still have a few moments before we need to put the color in. So take your time.
The other really cool thing about this is you don't have to make it all one color. You can always split your dough in half and do 2 different colors.
That's a great
idea. You're like, you know, I don't know. I maybe I like purple and pink and blue, but I only have one. What I did yesterday is I took an amount just like this and I split it 3 ways for my 3 daughters because each one of them wanted a different color. And that's how I ended up with these. Guys, see that? This is literally just one batch from one of these. And they split it because each one of them wanted their favorite colors. And what's really cool about this too is when you work the color in, let me show you this one. We were playing around with how much we would need. And so if you guys look really closely, do you guys see how it has the dark swirls and some of the light swirls? So we started it with just 1 drop of food coloring. And then after that, we added a second drop and it gave us those swirls. Pretty cool, right?
Very cool. If you keep mixing it, it should become less runny the more you work it together. And then there was is there a way to make it less sticky? Emma, which one do you think is sticky? Both of them, or is there one that's stickier than the other, you think? That's okay if you don't have color. They're pretty just the way they are, or if you get color later down the road, you can put color in. So you don't have to have color. It's just something to make it a little bit more of your own. How's everybody doing? Everybody looks like they're having fun. It's all coming together. I see a lot of you came prepared with gloves. When I make mine, I might take your tip and use gloves. That's so smart.
I see a lot of people who are ready for the color too.
Oh, yes. Okay.
The one on the stove, as you guys can see, this is not sticking to my hands. So if it's still pretty sticky, it might have needed a little bit more heat. Like we might have needed to heat it up a little bit more. But you guys see that? It's not like it's enough that it holds to my fingers, but it's not sticking to my hands. So that comes down to either just working it a little bit more or giving it some extra heat if it's the one from the stove. All right, you guys ready for color? I think I see a lot of people with their colors. You guys have your color? I'd love to hear in the chat box what colors you guys are using. Can we see some ideas? What colors is everybody using?
Well, if I had my Play-Doh in front of me, I would probably add orange for PA virtual, because that's one of our great colors here. Oh, yellow and blue. I love those colors. Good job, Shelby. Anybody else want to share in the chat what color they want to make their Play-Doh? Even if you don't have the color, you can just tell us what color you would make it if you had coloring. Green and pink. Oh, I'm a pink girl too, Maya. Purple, red, blue, green, red and yellow. Awesome, guys.
So I've got some colors here. I've got this teal color. It's a greenish tealish color. And I've got some purple. And I've got some pink. This is more of a magenta. And I've got some orange. And I think I'm going to go with Miss Heather and maybe make some orange. All right. And what you guys also notice is I separated, do you guys see that? I separated mine into two here. And I'm going to separate this one into two pieces too. You guys see that? So that's why I rolled it the way I rolled it. So it would make it easier for me to separate. And I'm just putting it down in like a round fashion. And right in the middle of it. Now, if you have colors and you're not used to using colors, remember that colors do stain your skin a little bit. Like it's food coloring, but it still gets your skin stained a little bit in the colors. So either you want gloves, or if you don't want gloves, just be very careful about your placement. So I'm not going to wear gloves, but I'm going to show you guys how I am going to do it. So I'm going to start with some orange here. And I'm going to put one drop. You guys see that? Just one drop. And I can come back and always put more, but with that one drop, you see how it's kind of liquidy on there? Do your best not to touch it if you are not wearing gloves. So I'm going to basically just keep wrapping it in. You guys see that?
Yes.
Okay. You see how the color came out and it's on the paper here? So again, notice that I am avoiding touching it for the time being until I get it wrapped in. Okay. And if you can avoid touching it while it gets wrapped in, then you won't have to worry about the color getting on your hands. I'm going to keep, you guys see that? What the color starting to come out? And notice, see, no orange on my hands, right? Because I was able to wrap it in before I started working in the color. So the color starting to come through. You guys want to keep playing with that, and little by little, do you guys see how the color's changing? In fact, look at that there. You guys see that?
Yeah.
And then if I don't like, let's say I don't like this once it comes out, once I get the whole Play-Doh colored orange, if I don't like that shade, I can always do the same thing again and add an extra color to it, like an extra drop of food coloring to it. But you don't want to go too much too quickly. You want to be able to, you can add glitter. If you add glitter, it is not edible anymore. Okay. Do not eat glitter. Okay. No. So if you add glitter, you can add glitter. And let me go. I do not recommend you guys eating any of this Play-Doh. While it is all ingredients that are edible, it's not going to taste good and it'll probably give you a tummy ache. Okay. A cup of salt is way more salt than anybody needs in, gosh, I don't know. That's way over your salt quota, right? Yeah. And so while these are things that are considered, edible ingredients, they're not good for your health. Okay. So please don't eat the Play-Doh. Okay. And the glitter definitely makes it something you can't eat anymore. You guys see how the orange is coming through? It takes a little bit of a while, and if I don't like the color of orange, all I'm going to do is I'm going to do this. Right? You guys see that? You see the difference in color? And if I want it darker, I'm just going to go and add one more drop in the middle. I'll go ahead and do the same thing we did before, which is continue to work it in more.
How are we doing, guys? Looks like we're doing pretty good. I see a lot of people working hard, mixing and kneading. Oh, yeah. Great job, guys. Oh, I see some very pink Play-Doh. Very cool. You made that for me, didn't you? Great job, guys.
All right, and so here is my first one that has orange, and you guys can clearly see how it is now orange, and there's the streaks from the second drop I added. So if I keep working it in, those streaks will be gone entirely. But I think I'm going to leave that for my daughters to do. They'll have fun with that. I'll leave that for them to work into different colors. But there is my orange Play-Doh. Now I'm going to go over here and I'm going to start with, let's see, let's experiment here with some colors. Now, I don't think I made green yet. I did a teal color, but I haven't made green. So I'm going to try some green here. Okay, let's see how this goes. So remember, see how the back here? I want to avoid touching that until it is worked in so that I don't get my hands turning green on me, right?
What a great technique. Did you learn that trial and error, or you just always were like, let me not get messy?
Let's just say I had pink hands the other day.
And 3 kids to teach you, right? The ways
Yes.
of doing things without the mess.
Yes, and the good thing is I was able to teach them where I made a mistake so that they would not repeat my mistake. So that was good. But you guys can see here the green coming out.
Yes, looks great. I love the tie-dye too, guys. Like if I were doing it, I might not even mix the color all the way in because I like the streaks.
Hey, look at that. It is such a pretty mix of green in there. And look at all the different colors there. So I'm just gonna continue to work this in here. Do you guys see that? Look at how the green's coming out. Isn't that awesome?
Oh, I like that green.
All right, so I'm gonna keep mixing this in. Can you guys show me? Can I see? Can you guys all hold up your Play-Doh so we can see what colors you guys have? Show me what's going on. I see a lot of people excited. Whoa, look at that. I see some really pretty blues and greens, some whites.
Oh, look at those colors.
And it's okay, like you guys are watching me here. It takes a while to work it in, but once it's worked in, right? Just kind of keep at it, play around with it. All right, and then I'm going to start on these ones here. Let's see. I'm going to go with blue on this one. See how that works out. All right, you guys can see it. Gonna work it in.
Steven made hot pink. Let me see. I want to see hot pink. I got to scroll to find you. Ooh, and a peach color. You guys are doing great.
I mean, you guys can see here, do you see the colors starting to blend in? So this is the one that we did that was not done on the stove. This was our non-cooking one. It had the flour, the salt, the water, and the touch of oil. As you guys can see, the color starting to come through here.
Do you notice if one is easier than the other to mix in the color? Like it looks like the one maybe on the stove that's a little bit softer was easier to get the color into, or am I just not on the right track?
No, I think it definitely, it depends on really what your preference is. So personally, like if you don't have the ability to get somebody to do it on the stove or things like that, like this is a good substitute. But I personally like this one better, the one with the cornstarch and the baking soda, from a texture standpoint, as well as from an ease of use. And it very much reminds me of like an old fat, like the type of Play-Doh you get in the store.
Right.
It's just a matter of being able to really, have an adult there and that couple of minutes, because you have to stand on the stove next to it the entire time so it doesn't burn, It doesn't go bad. But you can see here as I'm mixing this in, like the colors do come. It just, this one does take a little bit more work than the ones that were done on the stove. So all different ways of doing it. But
I like that blue too. That's looking great.
Right? I'm gonna shoot. So this one here, like if you guys look at that a little bit more, you can kind of see how the colors are mixing, but again, different textures, right? So this texture here, it also, the ingredient amounts makes a lot more from the non-cooked versus the one that we use the stove for. But I really do like my preference, and you guys can see the difference here. You can see how this is very much more of that kinetic sand type of feeling and appearance versus the more granular. And
sometimes they're sticky, guys, depending on like maybe we put a little bit too much of one of the ingredients in. Maybe you just have to keep working at it. And sometimes Play-Doh is just a little sticky depending on the brand. So sometimes it might just be a little sticky.
You can always probably add a little bit more cornstarch to it, and that might help with the stickiness as well. So while everyone's working on these, does anybody have any questions? That's awesome. 8 was different colors. Is that what I'm reading? That's awesome. I mean, you definitely can, because I mean, look at this one. I could have cut this into 2 different ones, right? And if I wanted to make one of them purple, all I would need to do is add some red, and I'd probably get a purple one out of it too, right?
Oh, I see.
Wow.
They're all very nice.
I love the comments. It feels like real Play-Doh, but hot pink.
I like the hot pink. Cool color. Oh, yeah. And you know what, friends? If you really wanted to be good at sharing today, you could even rip it apart and give some maybe to a brother or a sister or a cousin or a friend. Whoa, I see somebody made a whole big batch over there.
That's awesome. You guys have done such a wonderful job. Are you all having fun? Yeah.
Oh, I see some in a purple bowl. That almost looks like ice cream. Good
we've
job,
got some people
guys.
who have already gone the next step and are playing with it. They've made it, and now they're like, let me just have fun.
Did anybody end up putting glitter in it? No, that's okay. Sometimes it might make glitter might make it feel a little bit more rough too. So, I mean, it's definitely personal preference.
Yeah. So there's some questions about how do you make the first one less sticky? Add a little bit more cornstarch. Okay. Not too much, but add a little bit more cornstarch. That should help with the stickiness. How to store it. I store all of mine, as you guys saw, in Ziploc baggies. It's really up to you if you have a container that you want to store it in that has a cap. But I just use Ziploc baggies because they're the quickest and easiest way. Oh my God, did somebody just write their name in Play-Doh?
That was smart. Good job.
But yes, easiest way to store it, Ziploc baggie or some type of container. And with any of them, you can always add the glitter in. It's just your personal preference about like how you feel. A lot of us like I like this one because to me it feels softer, and it reminds me of the Play-Doh you get in the stores. Versus this one that's more grainy because of the salt. But everybody's different. If you like grainy, then you might want to keep, maybe that's your favorite kind. If you like it to be more soft and like more putty, or again, I'll show you guys. You know what I'm talking about? You guys feel like and see that? So it all just really depends on what your preference is, what you like better. And that's one of the reasons why we did 2 different recipes here today.
Well, guys, you did an amazing job. Did everybody have fun today making 2 or at least 1 type of Play-Doh? Some people made 2, right? And for those who didn't get a chance to do the one on the stove, maybe that's a fun activity you can do with an adult this weekend or maybe after dinner. But don't forget when you're using the stove to always have an adult with you, right? Because we don't want your little fingers to get burnt or anything else. Safety first, right, friends? Does anybody have any other questions for Dr. BuAli before we start to wrap up and say our goodbyes and things like that? Anybody have any other questions, or anybody else want to just show off their Play-Doh before we start to wrap up? Somebody did one with all the colors in one. Oh my goodness, what does that look like?
Look at that. Some awesome, guys. Great job. Look at all you guys with all your different Play-Dohs, and your consistencies. I hope you have a lot of fun playing with it. And remember, don't go putting Play-Doh on carpet, please, because your adults are not going to like that, okay?
Or in your hair.
Or in your hair, okay? Thank you all, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.
Hi.